share my screen. Where do I do that?
Bottom right, hover, and you should have this
There
bar.
Let's see. Okay, yep. So present?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Neat. What can you guys see? Oh, here we go. Let's see. All right. A window.
It'll do a monitor or a window. Probably a monitor, since you'll be using different apps, or you'll be using terminal and bouncing.
Yeah, you know what? That's also Mac is blocking this. I got to go into my preferences and let it through.
Oh yeah, you might have to cancel, quit, and come back.
Oh, really?
That's how aggressive it is.
Wow.
Maybe with the new OS, but or maybe with some updates, it's fixed it. But right after the software update, no one could figure out how to use Google Meet anymore. It was like catastrophe across.
Your screen. Okay, hold on a second.
No problem.
Let's see. Shit. Yeah, I'm gonna have to rejoin.
It's okay. We'll be here.
Yep, I'll be right back.
Alrighty. Did you get Java?
Yeah, I did. I did. I got everything IntelliJ and Java, so I'm good.
Okay. When you fire up terminal, what does the title bar say? Does it say ZSH?
On IntelliJ or?
No, just regular old terminal.
Oh, it should say your Mac, what it's called, your username.
Let's see if this works. Do a window. Or no, maybe I'll do an entire screen. I got so much open right now.
Let's see.
Yeah, probably a screen or.
Yeah, I'll do screen. Okay. Wait a second. Okay, so entire screen. And we'll do this one. And then I'll move over here.
Yep.
Okay. What do you see?
Some mountains. Yeah, where's that?
That is in the Medicine Bow National Forest in Wyoming.
Oh, that's pretty.
Yeah.
Nice.
That was an amazing place. All right. So now you should see my terminal over here.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'll just go to this is where I put the zip. So you see here, this is what I gave you guys, this deduper. I'm just going to unzip this.
So.
Okay.
How do I download this?
Okay. All right. So let me just go over the structure with you real quick. So it's got a bin and a lib, as you can see. So the bin has a few things in it. So you see the bat file there. So this is basically cross-platform. So this will execute on Windows and Linux. So if you're on a Mac, you want to use the one that doesn't have bat. Okay. So the other thing you're going to see in here is data and conf. So if I go in here, what I've got is a few test databases in here, and I have a flat file. So if you wait a second. Let's see. This is like a flat file that I use for testing. So you can see here, here's the columns, this first part here, and then I don't think this is rendering the line feed, the carriage return very well, but this is all the data. So you can use this as a test if you want to test CSV. And I've also got some SQLite databases in here. So you see I have a Chinook database and a real underscore state DB. So if you want to look that up, we can hop in here and you can see all the different tables I've got in here, and you can actually go in and select from these guys. So here's the data and all that stuff.
Okay, I
so
see.
This is prepackaged with a bunch of data. So again, to make if we want to give this to people, they can use this to kind of prove that it's running correctly on their machine. And this doesn't take any network. This is all file based. So we don't have to worry about connecting up to a Postgres database or anything like that. This is just SQLite and flat file. So that's what's in the data folder. This is really important. This is pretty important because this is where all of the existing tests can run from. Now, any questions about that?
No.
Not so far.
Cool. So then there's conf. And conf is important too. So I'm using an interface called JNDI, which is Java naming directory interface. So this is a way of defining our database connections. So inside JNDI, you're going to see this thing called default_ds.properties, right? So let's look at this guy. So you see here, there's two types that I allow in deduper. First is a javax.sql.data source. This is a JDBC connection, like you've seen a million times. It's got a driver, it's got a URL, it's got a username and a password. Now, these SQLite databases don't have any security around them, so you don't have to worry about that. The other type is a map, which is just some key value pairs. So if you want to spool out a flat file, you're going to create a map. So in this case, this real estate out hash /type is equal to java util.map, and it's got an extension, which is text, and it's got a delimiter, which is pipe. So what this is saying is, if you're going to spool out a flat file, it's going to spool it out with .text and with a pipe between each value. So the target name here, which is what's actually going to come out, is a file path. So in this case, this is going to go into the data directory, into a directory called output data, and it's going to create a file called dupe name with .txt, and it's going to be pipe delimited. So there's only two types. It's real simple. So if you're spooling out flat files, you're going to use a map. If you're going to spool out to a database, you use JDBC.
Okay.
So, but this is important because default_ds is a context, and you're going to see that when we go through the command line. A context is basically, you can have tons of these different .properties files in here, and you have to specify which one you're talking about. But you don't refer to it with the whole .properties part. It's just default_ds. That's the context. So when you want to pull anything out of this file, just call it default_ds, and that's all you got to do.
Okay.
Okay. So you can have, and there's a CLI to create these and to append data to them. So these are human editable. You can go in and edit these directly, but there's also some command line interface that will actually do that stuff for you. It's got some shortcuts.
Okay.
Okay. Questions about that?
No.
Not yet.
All right. Now, so that's that. So I'm going to take you into the lib folder, but let me just show you real quick. If you want to run the help, it's just -h. Okay. It's kind of a big help file. So this is everything you can do in the software, right? So there's that. See how it says self-documenting, right? It's got this. And so if I want to get the version, now right now the version is just 0.0.1. But there you go. So there it actually is. So as part of the build process, I have a versions.properties file, and I copy it into the binary here so that it's. So every time I basically make a build, I'm getting the latest version injected into the software. So that'll always be there. Now before we go any further, let me show you the lib folder. This is going to be important too. Now, what you're seeing here is all the jars. Now these are the jars that are dependent, that my CLI is dependent on. These are all the jars. So see here, you see deduper 35, that's my library. So that's bundled into this right there. Then there's the CLI jar itself, which actually runs all the command line interface stuff, and all the rest of this is just supporting libraries that I had to use to write the software. So if we want to add JDBC types, this is where we would do it. So you'll see out of the box here, you got SQLite right here. So this is allowing us to talk to SQLite databases. So if we wanted to add Postgres, literally you just come in, drop the Postgres JDBC driver into here, and you're good. We can support Postgres. So it's real simple. We dump whatever jars we want here for any sort of new database support, and it'll just work.
Where do you get a list of those jar files for, like, if someone was like, oh, SQL Server, where do you get that?
Good question. So hold on one second. So if you want to do that, let me just drag a tab over here. Can you guys see my browser?
Yeah.
Okay. So just literally, just type this, Maven Postgres, right? Postgres client, JDBC, like that. Go here. It'll be Maven repository, and then you could just pluck the latest one out. Or if they have an older version, you can go through and figure out which one's the correct one.
Oh, wow. And you just drop it in.
So you come here, you click on this, you click on, where's the actual jar? Bundle, I think? Yeah. And that downloads it.
And then
you literally just drop that in the lib folder, and we're good.
So MVN repository has, you could stick in
if I want
anything.
To say SQL Server.
Okay. So that's just got all the drivers for all the databases that we would want.
Exactly. Now some of the more exotic ones like Vertica, those, they kind of paywall those. I think even Oracle has theirs out on Maven now. Yeah, look at that. See, they didn't used to do this, but now it's packaged out on the internet, which is really nice.
Mm-hmm.
So anything you need, like MySQL, they're all here.
Awesome.
So if anytime we need one, come here, download or drop it in the lib folder, and then all we have to do is come in and configure the database connection strings, and we should be good to go. That's the beauty of JDBC. Now, the other thing to point out is this guy. You see this?
Mm-hmm.
CSV JDBC. Now, what this is a read-only query interface on top of CSV. So I'll show you guys what this looks like, but you configure this slightly differently than you do if it's so anytime you're gonna be querying, your source is gonna be if it's a flat file, you need to use this driver, and I'll show you what that looks like. But this allows us to basically write SQL against flat files.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So those are the two that you should care about. The rest of these are just various things I needed to achieve different functionality. Now you see there's also a folder in here called conf. This is important too. Okay, let's look at this. So we've got a JNDI.properties file, a log file, and a versions.property. Versions.property is what. So this is actually what's read by my software when you hit -V in the command line. So this is where that sits. The log, this controls the logging output. We may want to mess with this a little bit. I don't know that we want logging information in the console. I think that's awkward. So the CLI should just have application text, not logs. But you'll see this is the path to the logs. And what this does is this will create a log file with the timestamp, with this name in it,
Mm-hmm.
and it will basically roll over when it hits 100 megabytes in size. So you don't have to worry about, it getting too big or any of that stuff. So basically it'll create a max of 20 files, and they'll each be 100 megabytes each. And then when it hits 21, it'll start rolling over and reusing the ones it's already created.
Okay.
So you see here, you have this is the names. So you have one called console. So when it prints out to standard out, which is the CLI, you get this, right? When it's writing to a log file, it's using this rolling file. So you have console, and these are strings. These are just names, right? So if you come down here, here are the appenders. So console and rolling files. So these two map to these two. So if we want to disable one, we come down here, we can just comment it out, and then it'll only, like if we only wanted to do file, we could get rid of this, which we might want to do. We'll have to see. But that's all config. And then we've also got the JNDI properties. So this is important too. Now, what you see here, this is the really important part. The root, you see how that's conf./JNDI?
Mm-hmm.
So that maps back to this bin folder. There's that JNDI. So conf/JNDI, because remember, we're going to be executing in the bin. So that's again configurable, but out of the box, just to make it easy, so you could just like unzip this and start using it. That's where the default is. So that basically is a mapping to say when you want to look up JNDI directory lookups and look up database connections, go to conf/JNDI, and as we know, inside JNDI is that properties file.
Okay.
So that basically tells the software where to look for database connections.
Okay.
Okay. So, and I'm just about ready to do the demo, but let me talk about this real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So you see, we have this data source here, which is javax.sql.data source. That's all the same. Now this is what it looks like when you want to query a CSV. Your driver is this guy right here, which maps to the CSV JDBC I showed you earlier. And then this is the actual URL. So look at the path here. You got CSV : and then a path to a file. Now, what you'll notice here, do you see how there's not a file name?
Mm-hmm.
It gives you a directory, and it tells you what types of extensions to look for. Mm-hmm. But it does not give you the file name. The reason for that is in this driver, each file is a table, and that's something you can select from. So files are tables. So you get the connection. Basically, it connects you to a directory, and inside that directory, everything inside there is considered a table.
Oh, okay.
So if you want to query a flat file, you want to give the path to the flat file, but not the actual name of it. It won't work if you do, because it's basically going to treat that as a directory path, and it'll say, I don't see, source, test, resources, data, output, data / file1.txt. It won't find it. It'll try to look at and treat that like a directory. So you only want to give the directory when you're querying flat files. Now,
so can you query like multiple flat files?
You can even join them together.
Oh, so you could treat them like databases.
They're just like database tables. Yep.
Wow.
Yep. They're just like database tables.
So like oftentimes when you get a massive amount of data through CSV, it's like chunked out like 5 CSVs to cover all the rows. So then you could just leave them in a directory and query them as one thing.
Exactly. Yep. So
that's cool.
I believe I'll have to go look at the driver. It may even allow you to do star. So imagine you have big flat file 1 through big flat file 5. You may be able to do big flat file star and have it query all of them. I need to go look at that functionality, but I'm pretty sure it exists.
Well, it would choke if the schema were different, right? You'd have to
the schema would have to be identical.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. So So we can go look at that. The driver is very powerful. I've been using this driver for many years, and it's just really convenient to put, a nice SQL interface on top of any flat file you want to talk to. So now this only works for CSV. So if it's anything besides ASCII, you're going to have a problem. So it can't talk to Avro, it can't talk to Parquet, it can't talk to anything that's a binary format. It can only read plain text flat files. So that's something to keep in mind. It can also query zip files. So if we want, we can change this to .zip and it'll query everything inside the zip file.
Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is how you do flat file querying. Here's, you guys have seen this a billion times. This is SQLite. You're going to give the path and then the name of the .db, and then you can query anything inside the DB. So this is very straightforward.
And it's pre-configured to work with the stuff that comes down from the download.
Yes. So that's the beauty of this. Like, there's all this stuff that's bootstrapped out of the box that you just literally drop this. You see, I just unzipped it. I've started using it, right? I didn't change anything. I didn't copy stuff. I didn't change config. This will just work out of the box without any configuration.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome. Yeah.
Okay. So that's that. So let's go back to the bin. As I told you earlier, we're going to use deduper that we're going to use this guy right here, right? So he's how you execute. Like I said before, okay?
Got it.
All right. Let's show a little demo. And I'll go through all this with you. Well, actually, let's go through the help real quick. I won't go through everything in a ton of detail because there's a lot here, but so up here, these are easy. This is just getting the version, the help, right? So you can see the way that this is output, you have options followed by commands and then command options. So in the case of version help, that's the only thing you can do. There's no parameters to pass in. They're just, it reads -h and then prints out the result. So here's a bunch of stuff. This will add JNDI information to that default properties. So let me show you what that looks like. So real quick, if I say list contexts, right? Remember I told you default _ds.properties is a context. So if I say, okay, so it found this one, right? Mm-hmm. So it went into that root, it found the root, it then went out to the root and found all the contexts. So if there was 10 in here, it would list all 10, but it only has 1 in there right now, so it only shows the 1. Okay, these are just little helpers. So if you wanted to automate, if you're like wanting to use this through automation, and you had maybe dynamic database connection strings that you didn't know before you started your test, you could use this interface to add those connections at runtime, and then go execute your code, execute your actual job against what you've entered in. So that's why I have this in here.
Okay.
So the next thing you can do is, let's see, list entries. So let's do that. This is going to bomb. The reason, and this is one thing I'm cleaning up, so that we should get stack traces. I'm going to clean this up so it gives you a nice little error message. So again, this is still raw. So this is expecting, it wants to show the entries for a specific context, but I didn't give it a context, so it barfed that. So I have to give it default _ds. Okay, and there's all the database information. So it read through that and dumped everything out. So again, if you're doing automation, this is really handy to give your, here's the connections that you're dealing with.
Right.
And if I wanted to get, and the other thing to note here is I'm not printing out passwords. So any password information won't be dumped out here. It'll just be blank.
Okay.
Let's see. And entry details. So if I wanted to get entry details, I can do that too. So entry details are inside a context and inside an entry in the context. So that takes a different string. So it's going to be default DS, and then it's going to be, let me just pull this one. So it takes 2 parameters. See? So now it just prints that entry. So it's just, these are little helpers. And if I wanted to add, I'm not going to demo that right now, but it's the same deal. You know, you can actually add new entries from the command line without having to
manually edit that.
Go manually edit anything. So it's just more in the way to help people who want to automate. All right. Cool. So let's do something more fun. Let me see which one of these I should use. Sent that one to you. So we'll do so the next thing I'm going to show you is you can sample the hash. That sounds kind of funny actually, but if you see here, the next command that you see on here is sample the hash. It's generated a sample hash value for a query. So you can actually run your query and get a sense of what the actual MD5 hash is going to look like. So I'll show that.
And why would you want to do that?
So imagine you're loading in hashes that maybe Deduper didn't create. You'd want to make sure that the formatting of your hash is matching what we're matching so that you're going to get a hit.
Okay.
Yeah. So this, actually, hold on a second. Okay. So this is really easy to do. Let me just clear the screen a little bit. So we're going to do so it'll be wait a second. Sample hash. And then we're going to use a source JNDI, so that's SJ. And for this one, we'll use real estate in, because that's configured.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll use, and that's in context default _ DS. And we're going to use, I think real estate in, if I remember, is using, so this is the name of the flat file. And then we're going to pass in the hash columns. Okay, so let's go through this real quick. So I'm calling the CLI, I'm calling sample hash, I'm giving a source JNDI of real estate in from the context default DS. And then I'm querying the table, in this case, Sacramento real estate transactions, which is actually a flat file. And I'm saying, create a hash based on these 5 columns, right? So that's everything going on here.
Real estate in is that the database?
Real estate in is the entry. I'll show you that in a second.
Okay.
Yeah. This needs 2 dashes. What am I doing wrong here? Oh, I know what I'm doing. You don't need a dash because sample hash. This is actually command. This isn't an option, so this is a command. Yeah. So see that? So what it does is it'll go query the very first record in the database. So in this case, it used these values, and it created this MD5.
Mm-hmm.
So this gives you a sanity check, right? When you're starting to look at this stuff. So this is exactly how it hashes the values out. So you see generating a sample hash for the query. This. So what it does is it grabs the first value in the row and it used street, and you can see street, state, city, state, zip, and price, and then that created that hash. So it's just a little, it's like a little sanity check.
Mm-hmm. So where do you store these hashes? Do you need to output somewhere?
Yeah. So they're not stored anywhere. They're actually generated on the fly. Mm-hmm. So basically, when it's going through a dedupe process, I'm storing them in memory.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Hold on a second. My dog was
yeah. So any questions about this?
No.
So let me go back. You were asking Chris about what's real estate in. Let me show you. The real estate in is right here. So it's one of the entries in default _DS. So it's going to go here, use this driver, go to this path, and query this file.
Okay.
All right.
Mm-hmm. So the Sacramento real estate transactions is a CSV file?
Yeah. Let's take a look.
Okay.
Yeah, you always have to reference the default, the DS file to, because that's where you're mapping to sources.
Exactly.
So what this function does is basically looks for the real estate entry from the default DS database and takes the Sacramento real estate transactions CSV file and creates a hash, basically. That's what it does.
And so if we look through the parameters, so use this entry in this JNDI lookup, query this file using and create the hash using these columns.
Got it.
All right.
And okay, let's see. What's a practical application for this?
For sampling the hash? So imagine you've got a bunch of hash values that maybe you created from some other process. And you go and you load them into Deduper, because Deduper allows you to load in an existing list of hashes and then dedupe against that, right?
Yeah.
So if you are getting different hashes and you're like, well, why aren't these matching? I did an MD5. Why aren't they matching? You can run this and say, oh, okay, so it's using, in this case, it's using a comma and a space, and the values are uppercase. So maybe you know what I mean? Like so basically it's more of a sanity check. It also gives me a real easy way to test that my this source is actually configured correctly, because if it's not, then the query will bomb and we'll get an error.
Got it.
Yeah.
But it checks like the entire thing. For example, if you have two fields with the same exact address, this is what it's gonna check. It's not gonna find like the 3526 High Street only in two different fields, correct? It's gonna be checking all the columns.
It'll check all the columns that you pass in
Mm-hmm.
right? So in this case, we passed in 5 columns.
But I'm speaking, it's going to check them as like a pack.
Oh, yes, yes. So basically, literally, it stringifies the entire row into this.
Got it. Okay.
And hashes that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the hash is a valid representation of all the contents in the row.
That's the beauty of hashes, baby.
So can you basically like unzip that hash and get all this information back?
No, you cannot. It is not. This is called a non-reversible hash because basically it's enough. There's enough information there to make it unique, but not enough to reverse it. If you could reverse it, it wouldn't be so compact. The beauty of this is I took a massive amount of data. So even if that string that I showed you were like thousands of characters long, the hash length would be the same.
Oh, interesting.
So this doesn't grow,
Mm-hmm.
which is amazing, right?
Yeah.
It's like one of the cool. So what you get is, so the beauty is I'm not storing this in memory. I'm storing this in memory. And this is way smaller to store in memory than all this.
That's a crucial part of your architecture then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, I could even go a step further, and we've done this at my job. We actually take strings and convert them to longs. So you can actually get a valid representation. This string is a long value, and that's only 8 bytes. So if we find that memory is a problem, I have some more levers I can pull to make this even smaller.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the little key. So basically, I store a bunch of these in memory. I churn through the rows, and I check, as I'm hashing new rows, does it point to this? And if it does, I know I've got a match, and I know I've got a duplicate.
Okay.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So let's do the next step. So let's do a simple. Let's all this crap. A simple dedupe. This is going to look pretty similar to what we just did. The source JNDI always requires an entry name and a context name. So as long as you pass in those two things, it's fine. Mm-hmm. And then you just pass in the name of the table you want to query. So in this case, we're going to use the real estate transactions table again. And then we're going to pass in hash columns.
Did you say hash columns?
Yep.
Okay. That's a reference to the fields that you're interested in.
Yep. So again, you could this is just a comma list. You can make this one value. Now one value is never going to give you, well, I guess it could give you dupes even if it's a single value, but there's easier ways to calculate it if you've got one column. This only really works and it's valuable if you're trying to find duplicates across several columns, not just one. So so if we run this, so the only thing we've really changed here, we've got the command is dedupe, and all the rest of this information is the same. So you got a source JNDI, you've got a context, you've got a name of a file, and you've got hash columns, right? So let's run this.
Wait, you're looking for duplicates of houses that are on the same street and cost the same?
Yes. Yeah, it's kind of a straw man. I mean, really a better way to do it would be something like price doesn't really make sense. Like it's more of it's sort of a nonsensical example.
Yeah. I just want to envision what the result will be.
Sure. I've stacked the deck. I've actually purposely loaded the file with specific dupes so that we'll get
Okay.
a consistent answer. So I've already taken care of that.
Nice.
So this is a small file. It's only got 1,000 rows. So let's run this. All right, done. So let's look at the output here. Deduping data set based on query. Now you'll notice this says query. This can be a file name or it can be a SQL expression, and that's very important. So if you wanted to make this a complex SQL expression, you can do it. The only requirement is any column that you have listed here, obviously, must be in here. So if it doesn't find a SQL expression, what it does is it parses this value and looks for select in the front. If it doesn't find it, it basically appends select star from in front of that expression. Okay. So you can either give it a complex SQL expression that's a select, or you could just do a select star. Now, select star on a table with primary keys is never going to give you any duplicates. So typically, you'd want to do this on a flat file or on a subset of columns that are not the primary key.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go through the log here. So there's a producer thread. So deduper is a asynchronous multi-threaded API. So when I start pushing, basically there's two steps to this. Now this specific example does not persist anything. You notice that, right? There's no output. It's just a report. I didn't push the deduped data set. I didn't push the duplicate data set. I didn't save anything. I'm going to show you that too, but this basically is just, if I want to just tell me if there's dupes in my data, but I don't want to persist anything, this is how you do it. Okay. So there's a producer that is the reader. You can think of it like the reader and the writers, right? So there's one reader, which is the thing doing the dedupe. Now, if you have the deduped data set configured, or you want to collect the duplicates, there's separate threads that get spun up for each one of those persistence operations. So the reason it does that is I don't want to basically, if I'm doing it in one thread, I'm publishing and persisting on the same thread, and it can be slow. So basically, the reader can get through its data as fast as it can, and the writers can be slower and do their persistence at a slower pace. And I don't care. I'm just blindly slamming rows to them as fast as they can process them. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. So when you see the producer thread, that's the reader thread. So there's only ever one of those. Now, as we go through this API a little more, you're going to see other threads that spin up. So there's other threads that are going to come up and handle persistence if persistence is configured. You notice in this case it's not configured, so you only see one thread, and that's the one that actually does the dedupe. Okay, but this is still valuable because if you just want to know, hey, what do I have duplicates in this data? It's still giving you a lot of information. So let's look at the report. So we found a total of 986 records. Here's all the columns we found, because remember, they didn't tell us what columns to use, so we did select star. So this is all the columns that we found, and this is the columns that we hashed on. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We found 4 duplicates. We found 3 distinct duplicates, which means we found one duplicate more than once, and we found 982 unique hashes, which makes sense because we have 4 duplicates. So we have 986 rows, 4 dupes, and 982 unique hashes. And this just means that we had the same duplicate happen more than once. Mm-hmm. Okay. So this is sort of a quick and dirty way. Do I have dupes? And then bam, you run this, and then you can get your answer.
That's good. It's useful even without running the output. Just to
right.
See.
So the thought is, you run this. There's no dupes. Oh, okay, fine. I don't care. Now that's my sanity check. If I do have dupes, okay, well now I want to know. Now I want to dedupe that data, or maybe I want to persist just the dupes. So then you get all these other options that you want to play with. You know what I mean?
Right.
So can you just take a CSV file, process it, and export the same file without the dupe fields? Like remove the dupe.
Yes. So this will produce on the output side 3 things. Mm-hmm. it has the potential to if you configure for it. So we'll go through those examples. So you can produce the deduped data. So basically, if you only want the 982 unique values without the dupes, it can do that. If you only care about the dupes and you don't care about the deduped data, it can do that. If you only want the hashes because you want to take them and do something else with them down the road, it can do that. Or it can do all three.
Okay.
So all of these are multi-threaded operations. So we can add more persistence to the API without blocking anything. So the speed doesn't slow down while we're scaling up the number of things that are going on. So eventually, when I do the fuzzy matcher and I'm basically finding what I call similar-ish rows, that'll be yet another worker service that's persisting all the similar-ish rows and building out a structure for that.
Interesting.
Okay.
So you'll see here the thread pool. What you're going to see, all of these things on this thread pool, that's the reader thread, and so this is telling you only one thread got spooled up to actually write the data, or shrink the data. What you're going to see as more threads pop up, you'll see other names for these threads. So that just means that there's multiple threads running, doing different operations and not blocking each other. Okay.
Yep. Okay.
And then you'll see this at the end. This is just shutting all the services down. This is basically taking all the threads in the thread pool and saying, all right, you're done, go to sleep. And then you get the deduping process is complete. And then out here, you get this nice little report that's just sort of a, like I said, a little sanity check that, do I have dupes? So if this is the bare minimum to use deduper to do anything useful is what I just showed you.
Okay.
Okay. Questions about that?
Nope.
So let's do a dedupe with an output.
Did you make a documentation already, or just the help inside
Sorry?
the CL? Did you create a documentation already, or you're working on this?
There is. Let me show you.
You can change the picture.
So this is fully documented.
This is the stuff we already have on the site, right? The API. Okay.
Yep. Now I don't have similar docs yet for the CLI.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. But with the help, the nice thing is you get a little bit of that with just the help documentation. I can also point you I can share this I can share the CLI repo with you. I can actually, let me pull this over and show you the code. This is my unit test. This is really, really cool. Let me show you how I tested this. This may be of interest to you. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is like my full suite of unit tests. So every time I change, something, or I add a unit test, I have down here, I have this thing called test output. So look at this. This is actually what is being produced by the output of my command line, right? So this is all the operations. See, here's the help. See how this maps directly to everything in my command line. So the way I tested this, I redirect the standard out to a file. So it doesn't go to the console, it actually goes to a file. And it goes into this thing called the test data folder. Or sorry, the data folder. So you see these red ones here, these aren't checked in.
Yeah.
So I have these are my my gold, my source of truth. So when I run my unit tests, I basically copy, once I get it working, I copy the correct output here. And then when I create this, I basically do an MD5 hash to make sure that they're matching. And if they don't match, I know something went wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Sweet.
So the other cool thing is if you look at the actual unit test. So if I wanted to test simple dedupe, right, what I just showed you. So here's the target file. Here's me passing the CLI commands directly. So I can literally copy and paste these values and dump them onto the command line.
Mm-hmm.
And it will run.
Okay.
So this basically is fully documented from the unit tests. So between that and the help file, it's something. It's definitely not. It needs
right.
formal documentation, but it's a good start anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And it allowed me to sort of self-document while I was writing the code.
That's so cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. So anyway, I thought that might be interesting.
Yeah, it is.
That way we know it's bulletproof.
Yeah, exactly. And the beauty of it is anytime I want to add more, it's just adding a new file, getting it working, and then adding that to the suite of unit tests. So I run this full suite of unit tests every time I do a new release of the code.
It's the right time to build that, right? As it's doing it after is a disaster or not efficient.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a little while to get the pattern right, but once I realized you could redirect standard out to a file as part of the unit test, that was sort of the eureka moment. Okay, so let's show you something a little more complicated now. So we'll still use the same input, but let's do a targeted output. So to do that, since these are dynamic values, I have to do it like this. You have to tell the type. So we're going to do an output type of CSV. So we're going to basically, what this is going to do is it's going to produce the deduped data set to a file. So then you need the same information. You need a JND, you need the entry name, you need the context. And delete if exists, this is just saying if the file already exists, delete it first, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is so what this is going to do. This is going to have this tells the application. TJ stands for targeted JNDI. So this is basically going to persist to real estate out entry using the same context and delete if true. This is going to dump the dedupe data out. So if you want to produce the dedupe data set, not the dupes, but the dedupe data set, this is how you do it. Now, before I do this, let me make sure that this is a valid test. Make sure that that's history. Easy. Oh, Elsie, sorry.
What did you say TJ stands for?
TJ stands for target JNDI. So the idea is that you produce a target, a duplicate, and then hashes. So you'll see the naming convention maps to those concepts.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. why isn't this working? List contents. Oh. Okay. LE. There we go. So let me make sure that this maps real estate in. I think that'll work. So real estate in, real estate out test. I don't think I have that one. So I need to put that in. Or I could do SQLite test. Let's do that. Actually, what we can do, this is actually a good thing to, I'll show you guys how to, I'll add one real quick. Real estate out data, output data. So I'll just make this. Okay, let's run this and let's see. We'll take a look. I'll explain what I did. Okay, so let's look at this. There's a lot more information here now. So you'll see here, we didn't specify for the output an extension. So by default, it defaults to a text. So that means that the file that we created with the dedupe data is going to have a .txt, and the delimiter was also blank, so we used comma. We can override these in the JND in the entry, but by default, this is important. So it'll use text as the extension and comma as the delimiter. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So now you'll see a consumer is spinning up. So this is a different thread. So we have one thread doing the reading and one thread doing the writing. So you'll see now the following SQL statement will be run because remember we didn't. So what this is doing, this is actually saying where 1 equals 2. That'll never be true. So this is to pull the columns. So what this is, this is actually pretty interesting. What this does is it infers using this metadata that it receives,
Mm-hmm.
all of the column information. So it will create a copy, an output copy of what the input is. So you don't have to worry about, oh, what do I name my table? What columns? It'll infer that based on this. This is actually pulling all the metadata out, so it'll know the data types, the nullability, all that type of information. The next thing it does is it locks the file. So we only allow, when this is running, because it's multi-threaded, we need a guarantee that other processes aren't going to try to write to the same file. We don't want to do that, right? So this is actually creating a lock file around the name of the file. So while this has a lock file, anything trying to access that file won't be allowed to. From my program, I can't control things outside of that program, but inside my program, other things cannot access this file. So it's a protection from other threads, right?
Good.
So this creates a lock file. Delete is true, so it's going to try to delete it. Now, if it doesn't exist, it's just going to skip it. And now look what we have, writing 500 rows to data target name. Now, the dedupe report finishes, you'd say, well, why we have 982 rows, why are we already getting the report? Well, because it's asynchronous. So the reading is done at this point. I've published all my data and I'm giving my report. And now the writing is complete, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now we write 500 rows. So it writes 500 rows at a time, and that's configurable. So basically it'll process 500 rows at a time. And then this is the balance of rows. So it wrote another 482 rows. And now the writing is complete. And now the lock file. So some of these, it's kind of hard to read because we're doing, things are happening a little bit out of order. But at the end here, the target file is unlocked because the writing is complete. The consuming services are all done. It shuts down. The deduping process is complete. This information is the same because we already knew this from the first time we ran it. The only thing we're doing differently is we're persisting the output. So now if we look in, so you see now we have a new file, target name.txt. And if we look at that guy, look at that. I have all the columns, all the values. But look at the number of rows. We've only got 982, plus the column header, right?
Right.
So it deduped it.
So this is the clean file without the dupes.
Clean file without the dupes. Yep.
Cool. Is this the CSV persister like a Java library?
No, that's a custom class that I wrote.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Anything you see in here, these classes are all these are classes that are part of the actual code base.
I have a stupid question. I don't know why I just thought about this.
Yeah.
But you said it's multi-threaded, right?
Yes.
So can you run it on a CPU base or a GPU base, like depending on your computer?
Well, so Java typically, when it handles thread pools, will use the underlying when it spins up, it'll look at the underlying cores and figure out how to handle the thread pools. It's kind of more abstracted away from the programmer.
Oh, I got it. Okay. Yeah, I don't know how it works. I was just thinking if someone has like massive data to do like.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there's limitations to what I've built. I mean, this isn't really meant if you've got like 10 billion rows a day. This is probably going to be a little too slow for that. But it's more for you're exploring your data on the command line. You're just playing around with it. So I didn't build this for the enterprise. I built this for your average programmer who maybe has 1 million rows. They want to just find the dupes real quick. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But you could, this can definitely scale. I mean, it's using JDBC. It's very, very fast because it's doing the work in a tight loop, and all of the I spent a lot of time tuning the input, which is why you could see this. It was 1,000 rows, and it completed in under a second. The whole process, source and target, were all done in under a second. So it's still fast, but there's memory limitations that you may hit if you're like deduping like a 10 billion row data set.
Got it. Yeah.
So,
what's the gap, or what's involved in moving it in that direction?
Well, you really need, so deduping is a very hard problem in distributed computing because you need a unique set, and you can't be talking to all the nodes asking for, there's just a lot of shuffling and a lot of complexity that happens when you do this in a distributed fashion. So doing it on a single thread is probably in many ways the fastest way to do it. But remember, I have to store all the hashes in memory right now, right? So if you had, let's say 5 billion rows, and let's say it was a pretty unique data set, and you have 4 billion hashes, Java is eventually going to run out of memory. So there's a few ways to handle that. One is to start persisting the hashes to disk and reading them off a disk in an efficient fashion, rather than keeping it all in memory. But it will be an order of magnitude slower.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the types of limitations I'm talking about.
Okay.
You could easily run this on 100 million rows without it'll chew through that with no problem. Billion rows is probably no problem. You start getting. Go ahead.
Did you say that the top limit is 100 million rows?
Oh no. I'm saying it could chew through 100 million. It could probably chew through 1 billion. But if you start getting into 10, 20, 30 billion, we may need to look at re-architecting how the hashes are stored, because it's better to go slow and to complete than rather to try to go faster and crash.
Yeah.
Or the other thing is you get a beefier machine, right? That has more memory, and then you kick the JVM memory up more, and then it can store more.
Yeah,
but I would say you could turn this loose on a 1 billion row data set, no problem.
We need to find 1 billion rows, George. Test this shit out.
All right, let me show you something else that's neat. I'm going to show you how it can produce the duplicates. Any questions about this, by the way?
No, I was going to ask you to run one with a SQL query, but we have one. It's just it's translated there in the middle of the screen.
Sure, I can do that.
I mean, is it the same thing? You're just writing select and then your query right in the
literally
same way.
It would just look like that.
Okay.
And you wouldn't want to do select star, obviously, but that's all it is. You just need to enclose it in quotes so it treats it like a single string.
Okay.
All right. So let me show you how to produce dupes. This is pretty cool. So I'm just going to, so just keep in mind, anything you can do, you can keep TJ, you can do dupes and target and hashes, but I'm not, the command line gets kind of long, and I just want to show you the idea. But just so you can mix and match all this stuff. So let me show you how to produce hashes. And anything I'm doing to a flat file, I can also do to a database. So just keep that in mind.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case, I'm calling this DJ rather than TJ. So this means dupes JNDI.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it. I'm done. Now I can produce just dupes. So this is only going to produce dupes. If I kept the TJ and I added the DJ, then that would do a target output and dupes. But I'm just doing dupes now.
Interesting.
Okay. So this is going to delete if true. So this is going to delete that file we just created, and it's going to recreate the same file, but it's going to look different this time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's see. Let's let this run. Did I screw something?
I think the DJ delete if exists.
You know what? No, it's the what did I do wrong? Oh, it's not real estate out test, it's real estate out. This entry doesn't exist.
Oh.
In fact, if you see naming exception occurred on JNDI lookup of context default DS real estate, it tells you pretty explicitly what the error is. So but again, all this type of junk, we shouldn't be seeing this. We can clean this up. This is like I said, this is early access for you guys. So let's run this now. Okay. Now let's look what happened this time. So the same thing ran. We still have 2 threads because we have a thread for the producer and a thread for the deduping process. And you'll see In this case, we created a deduper producer, which is actually writing out the dupes. Okay, so it still does the lock. You know, all this stuff is still the same. But look at this.
3 rows written so far. Yep.
Okay.
So that's the dupes.
So let's look at this. So what I actually do is I write out the row as JSON.
Mm-hmm.
Right? This is the hash. This is the previous places that I found the dupes. Okay?
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, these are the instances of the dupes. So I found the original row on 341, and 342 and 984 had dupes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this is in this case we had 2 duplicates, right? Which we know because we said we found multiple duplicate dupes.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the actual output. So if you wanted to see, oh, this is the data that is duplicated, here you go. And then the next one is this hash. This found a dupe at row 404. The original was at 403, and here's the data.
Mm-hmm.
And then here's the third one. Found initially at 600, duplicated at 601, and here's the data as JSON.
So question, does it also check if the characters are like uppercase, lowercase, or it doesn't care about the case
So
sensitive?
upper and lowercase affect the hash. So I to upper everything to avoid any, you know, to avoid that problem.
Yeah, I'm asking if you have like two rows into your file with like, let's say the Lincoln. It's the one is uppercase, the other lowercase, but it's a duplicate. How are you going to figure this out?
Yeah, that's a good point. It may be something you want to parameterize. Like, do you want to produce dupes if you know, like an ignore case or, you know, consider case as part of the reason that there's a dupe? Because lowercase and uppercase L are definitely going to produce a different hash. So we probably let me put that in my notes, because that's a really good point.
Yeah, I could definitely imagine you're looking for distinct, or you'd want to output all, like if there was an error someplace where something was all caps.
Just typing up a git issue right now.
Mm-hmm.
Putting it in my backlog. Okay. All right. So questions about this?
Nope, that's straightforward. Well, is it also in a flat file?
This one's a flat file, yep.
But is it JSON?
This is.
So it's representing it in the console as JSON, but it's also producing.
Yes, this is actually, I actually emit JSON, and the reason for that is, you know, if I want to produce the data that is considered for the dupe in one row. I don't want to, you know, because that could be any amount of data. So I thought this was the easiest way to express it.
I remember you said the other day that you cannot actually write on the database you're reading from, right? So if you want to override the database,
you could
just remove the dupes and, you know.
So yes, you could actually create a new table with a different name and then write directly back to it. Yeah, you could do that. Okay,
that's an option, but can you like override the same table?
No.
No, that's not possible.
That would, because what's going to happen is when SQL when that select statement hits the table, SQL locks the table and won't even acknowledge. It basically won't allow you to do anything to it.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Okay. This is cool. So we're going to test this, basically redo all of this. What is, and we'll let you know, take a couple of days, but what is Do we both have to do research on how to secure a software license? Like, if we started selling this, how would we ensure there's a key? I think I looked into a bunch of WordPress-based stuff. Maybe let me do that homework. But do you have any ideas? You thought through that?
I have not. I will tell you right now, I have it under the GNU General Public License version 3. That's what the Git repo is, but it's private. So, but that's what the current license is. So we probably want to see which one allows us to sell it. I may have picked that one because that one was the best one for trying to do commercial sales. But yeah, if you could do some research, just let me know.
Yeah, I'll look for something that is easy to do and works with WordPress, because I mean, seems like we could sell it. We should sell it. Let's get into it and work out the bugs before we hit scale. I tried to look quickly for some comps. Like, WordPress ecosystem is full of like people with a little app, and they sell. It's hard to get the numbers, but I know like Elegant Themes has 140,000 friends on Facebook, and like they sell a $250 lifetime license to their theme. And I'd say, it's pretty safe that a third of those people have paid that money. And if you were thinking like, okay, if we sold this at like, $99 for lifetime, and you sold that to 10,000 people, that's $1 million.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I think that's our target, 10,000 licenses. I hate to sell a lifetime license, because I've actually emailed this dude at Elegant Themes like, dude, charge more money. You can't. I bought the license like 5 years ago. You're so stupid. Like, come on. So I don't want to do that, but like $99 a year, like $1 million a year, we could run. The three of us could run $1 million business part-time.
Yeah.
Without lifting a lot of fingers.
Yeah.
Off topic, I have a question.
Yes.
Are these the same commands for Windows, Linux, and Mac?
Yep. That's the beauty of this. If you use
awesome.
If you use the one with .bat, the behavior is identical.
Awesome, cool. And all you need is basically the Java, the SDK 14.
You just need Java.
You install Java and you run the terminal. Boom.
That's it, man.
Awesome.
Like, I try to make this as simple as possible.
Love it.
Let me show you one more thing. I know it's getting kind of late.
We're all night owls, I think.
Yeah, I know. I mean, here's the thing. I roll out of bed and just open my laptop and start working. So I don't have a commute anymore. So I sleep a lot later than I used to.
It's the beauty of it. I don't know if I wonder really how this is going to impact the world, because most people just realize like that being in the office is not that valuable, or you could go in 2 days a week and still get the same productivity. Yeah,
totally. It's changed. It's changing my mentality about it, and it's amazing. I have so much more free time. A lot of the progress I've made on this project has been, just hacking in the evenings.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's liberating. I feel more in tune with the household, with my kids, my family, and I'm getting same amount of work done. I only have a 10-minute commute and I walk, but it's privilege, though. I sometimes think like, what's going on in like the city of New York? Like, are there hungry kids and shit? Like, here we are, hooting it up, building products during quarantine.
I know.
But not everybody's got that luxury.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I feel very lucky that I can do my job remotely. I haven't had to lay anybody off, so I'm really happy.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. One other thing I wanted to while I have this file up, you notice the schema here is fixed for this guy, because so you have the hash, the row IDs where the duplicates were found, the first found row number, and the dupe values. So in a database, this schema is the same. So this is fixed internally by me. You can't alter this in any way.
Okay.
Because there's no need to, right? It's just, it's just sort of like kind of informational, and we don't allow any. I don't allow you to modify any of this stuff.
Okay.
So let me show you how to output the hashes. That's kind of interesting too. So in the same manner, it's just a hash JNDI, so it's HJ. All right. That.
So now
Didn't like
everything is
something.
H.
Did I? Maybe I used the. Hold on a second. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. There's an extra parameter when it's hashes, because basically what I'll do, if you set this to true, I will actually give you the JSON for your hash, so you know like what the content is. If you say no, then it's blank. Let's look at this. Oh, I think I hold on a second. Okay. So now, same thing. So you see this row, 982 rows, right? So let's look at that. And again, we have the same file name, but now we just have hashes and JSON. Okay? So this is all the hashes that I found. All the unique hashes. So it's 982, so this is all the unique hashes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you wanted to export this then can become a source. I can feed these hashes back in as I can use this as a source and say, do I have these hashes in another data set? So that's another option that you've got.
So is that just a shortcut for, what does that save you?
So if you have, let's say you have two files, right? And you want to say, well, what duplicates do I have across these two files?
Oh, okay.
You'd kick the hashes out of one, put them into a file, and then you could use that. What I didn't show you that's also capability is you can have a hash source, and you could feed hashes back in, and those get loaded in addition to new ones that you find. And that gives you the ability to dedupe not only against things that you find in a file, but things that you found in other files.
But the schema of the row has to be identical.
It does. That's the thing. Yeah, I mean, that's the only way. But if you think about it, if you had like 3 columns in file A and 3 columns in file B, they may be completely different data, but they all have city, state, and zip. It still has value for that type of.
Oh yeah. So you're truncating or you're limiting what it's looking at in the row.
Right.
So it doesn't matter if the schema is changing. You're just saying these 3 rows are my de facto schema. These 3 columns.
Exactly.
So you're hashing only what you're identifying as your data of interest.
Which, if you look at that's why this parameter is so important, right?
I see.
This is what it uses to create the hash. So we don't even really care about this. This is the query. All we're saying here is whatever your SQL query is gonna be, it has to have these columns because that's what we're hashing.
Yeah.
So is the hash the same for the same column every time you export it? Let's say you export the same thing twice. Is it going to be the same exact hash for the same column?
Yep.
Oh, that's interesting. So you can export like 2 different files and then go find these hashes and figure out, oh, that's the same thing.
Exactly. So yeah.
Ah,
So
got
the
it.
other, like I said, the other thing I didn't show you, but if you look at the help,
Mm-hmm.
let's see.
So if you had like a customer list from every year for 50 years, but the columns were all different, but they all had first name, last name, and telephone number, you could find duplicates across
Absolutely.
the years.
Yep.
Hmm.
So if you see here, where is it? Hash source. You see this? So this basically it's a separate data source that will, it looks for the column called hash and will cache all of those hashes in memory before it starts finding new hashes in its file. So it's already got a whole bunch of things to dedupe against before it even starts pulling out new dupes. So this gives you the ability to say, okay, show me file A and file B, give me the hashes for these 3 columns out of this, and then say, well, which ones do I have in file B? Make sense?
Yeah.
Yep.
So because I'm giving a few questions QAs here, to the question, are the exported hashes the same every time? The answer is yes. So you can compare hashes at a later time or between different exports.
Correct. As long as the row didn't change, right? So as long as the row is the same in file A and file B and everything's the same, the hashes are going to match.
Perfect.
So it's basically it's a mathematical representation of that string at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as that row doesn't change any of its values and those columns don't change, the hash will always be the same.
Cool.
So as far as what's left here, I'm working. Let me just say about the holes. One of the holes is obviously I don't want log information in the CLI. That's not good. But that's just configuration. And I'm going to try to. You saw a few places where I put in wrong parameters and we got stack traces. That shouldn't be happening. It should be a nice little text message saying, hey, something happened. Consult the log for more details.
Yeah.
Right. If we can't figure out an intelligent error message. And the other thing is the deduper library. There could be some weird things happening with the threading, and I need to do more. Like when one of the threads crashes, sometimes it hangs onto its resources and won't shut down. So the CLI will throw an error, but it won't exit. So it's just sort of in this hanging state. You just hit Control C if that happens, but I'm working on that for a more elegant way to shut down all the threads if errors occur. So those are the types of things I'm tuning. And once I'm done with all that, which is probably another couple weeks of work, I'm going to go back and write the algorithms to do fuzzy matching on similar-ish rows. So basically what that'll do, that's going to go through every row and determine the similarity of the subsequent row to the previous row, and then group together rows that are similar but not the same.
Mm-hmm.
So then
what kind of parameters do you have in there? I've seen like low, medium, or I don't know, like low, medium, and high in some WordPress apps for fuzzy matching. But is it an existing library that you're bringing in to do that?
Yeah. Yes. So let me bring up my browser here. This is like I love hashing and string distance. I just think that stuff is so interesting. I just love writing code around that topic. I've always loved doing that. That and graphs. I love like nodes and edges and stuff. But there's a so this is the first algorithm. And what this does, this basically it determines the distance between string A and string B. In other words, how many transformations would it take for A to look like B? And then it basically comes up with a statistical score.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm going to do is do the same thing. I'm going to take the row and concatenate it into something called an n-gram. The n-gram is basically just a bunch of strings that are mushed together into a single string. And then I'm going to compare row 1 to row 2, and then row 1 to row 3, and then row 1, and then all the rows are going to be compared against each other. And then what you're going to end up with is a grouping of row 1 has this many similar-ish rows. Row 2 has this many similar rows. So basically, it's going to be an expensive algorithm because you have to process every row against every other row. And with deduper, with exact matches, you don't have to do that because the hashes match or they don't. You're not scoring every row against every other row for similar-ish traits, right? So it'll be more expensive, but I think it'll make the tool about a million times more powerful because not only do you dedupe your data, but then we're also giving you at least a way to explore what rows you have in your sets that are similar.
Yeah.
And what this basically does is this does a scoring of the row, and we'll need to pick. What I'll do is I'm going to parameterize the threshold. So if you want to lower the threshold and get more similarity, you get things that are less similar, right? Or if you want to move it up higher, you'll get less rows that are similar. So basically, I'm gonna leave that as a parameter for the user so that they can basically explore like, oh, well, when I move it to like 75%,
yeah,
I get this many rows that are similar. But what if I want to make it 40%, or what if I want to make it 90%? So it'll give them the ability to do very interesting explorations of their data.
Yeah, that's super powerful, and you could just link to this so they could refer to how it's being done and then just give them like buckets or percents.
Right. So yeah, so basically what it'll be, there'll be the master row, and then the rows that are similar will get a score. And what I'm thinking is I'll have the row as expressed in JSON, and then I'll have a score for it. And then so that'll keep the schema real simple, right? And you'll just be able to open. It'll be two tables. It'll be the master row in one table, and then it'll be a one-to-many with all of its similar rows. So it'll just be a two-table join, and then you'll have all of the rows and then all of the similar rows. So I think it'll be really, really interesting to write that. And I'm thinking I'm also going to parameterize the algorithm. So there's Yarrow-Winkler, but there's also something called Levenshtein. Levenshtein is another. So basically, you could this is how this one works. It's basically looking at the number of transformations to go from kitten, like in this case, it's kitten to sitten. So again, it's a score. And you look at the score, and the algorithm can be the parameters, and then you can just do all kinds of really interesting explorations of your data that way.
Yeah, that's super powerful, like pattern detection, or I don't know, it seems like some CIA level shit to look at garbage and figure out if something's hiding there.
Yeah. I mean, that's the nice thing about statistical algorithms. They can do really, really powerful things that deterministic algorithms just can't do. I mean, there's just no way you could write a deterministic algorithm that wouldn't be just ultra expensive, where you could just mush a whole row of data together and then determine other rows' similarity to it. It would be almost impossible.
Yeah.
Or it would have to run for thousands of years because you'd be basically having to do every single iteration of the string. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So can you give me like 3 bullets on how defensible this is to competitors, or like the work that you've done? You said you wrote some classes. Like, how much of this is novel Brad Miller stuff, and how much off the shelf?
Well, I think Let me see. Doesn't work anymore. Shit. There was this really nice thing called calculated lines of code, and it basically breaks out all of the code that I wrote, and basically shows lines of code per class and all kinds of interesting stuff. This is deduper. But also bear in mind, I showed you I have about 4 or 5 libraries that I split apart. So this is probably about 3,500 lines of code all told. And the CLI, because it's leveraging that library and the library is doing 90% of the work, the CLI is probably less than 1,000 lines of code.
Mm-hmm.
So how novel is it? I don't know. I mean,
well, not how novel is it, but I mean, I know you play down your I don't know. You never boast, but like nobody built this. Would it take a talented developer a year, and it took you 2 months, or would it take them 2 years? I'm just looking like how likely would it be that someone would build this?
I don't know.
It's a hard question to answer, but I don't think Oracle's going to come and be like, oh, we're going to build that. Like, it's just that unsexy thing that no one's ever thought about. And then hopefully we could just like pop on the scene, make a couple of $1 million, and then if someone's like, hey, I'm going to do that, then we'll be like, fine.
Yeah. I get it. I'm not sure. It's
it's a custom app though. It's not like you just pulled together some off the shelf shit with a couple of threads. Like, it's hardcore. Like,
yeah. So if I can give you a quick.
yeah, go ahead.
So this is the main class. I'll just give you an idea. This is it's about 500 lines, but I typically like I told you I rewrote this stuff. This is the one doing all the persistence. There's actually a lot of code here now that I'm looking at it. And I like I said, I've refactored this stuff a whole bunch. I'm still not 100% happy with it. I'm still, messing with making it more.
Actually, the fewer lines of code would signify, significance versus more lines. So if you told me there were 50,000, I'd be like, well,
yeah, that's a little bit excessive.
But if you're like, there's 18 lines of code, it's like haiku, kung fu.
So I mean, and then there's also you can't forget about the unit testing code either, right? I wrote there's tons and tons of this is all my unit tests. So I've got all of these different unit tests and stuff. So and then go ahead.
How do you get like Homebrew to serve up or offer? Like, how do you? I don't know a lot about this, but how do you distribute this stuff? Does Homebrew have like a payment gateway, or is that just for open source?
Oh yeah. So you can you have to register your app with Homebrew. Yeah, I'm not sure about paying though. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah. Well, I'll do that research. I'm just thinking
you could put this on. You could easily put this on Homebrew. Absolutely. That's completely possible.
But we need to make sure we get paid for it. That's
yeah, for sure. Yeah. But yeah, the thing is with Java, Java just makes so many things so just insanely easy that otherwise would be very difficult. So like this whole scheme of how I'm storing the connection strings, that JNDI stuff, like I didn't have to think about any of that. That's just like I just used an off the shelf real simple file-based repository of database connections. It's like that type of stuff. You know, the ability to just query any database. You know, the CSV, JDBC, and you know all that stuff, and the ability to write some pretty straightforward multi-threaded code on it. I don't know. I mean, I've been using Java and you know Java related stuff for so many years. It's like for me this is not that hard. Mongo Sluice was way harder as far as like the problem, than this was. But I also learned a lot from that experience. So this is a much more solid, stable piece of software. But it's also solving a much easier problem. So
cool. Well, we're gonna sell 10,000 developers a $99 a month, a $99 a year tool, and we're gonna make $1 million.
I have a question.
Shoot.
So how easy is this to turn into a web application? Let's say, for example, I want to build something comparing products between WooCommerce for WordPress and Shopify. Let's say I have 2 stores and I want to compare the product database and find the duplicates. Is it easy to turn this into a web app?
Well, the problem. So here's always the problem, and this I think this is like this is something I do that probably it drives Chris insane. I always need direct, but the code I tend to write, I always like direct access to the databases, right? So you always need either flat files or a database itself. So if you could export the data, right, and then the web app could read the files, that's one way. Another way you could do it is you could put it on S3, and the web app could read from S3 buckets and dedupe from the S3 buckets. Or
ask from the user to give like an OAuth access directly to his website and his Shopify, so you have direct access on the databases.
Yeah, are people willing to do that usually? I don't know.
Shopify wouldn't give you access to their database. But I think there are tools out. There's a lot of tools out there that do this kind of thing. And what's novel about Deduper is that it works in the command line. So I don't know, like Zapier. I wonder. I don't think that might not do it, but there's a lot of tools like that might provide these like niche solutions.
Yeah, I mean, you could write an interesting web app with this as the engine for sure. You know, you could. The problem is doing side-by-side web apps when you have a lot of columns. I've always found that to be really hard, and it's really hard to get it to look right on the screen. You know, because you always have to scroll. You're gonna have two. You have two divs in your screen, and they're gonna have to be scrollable, because if you've got like 100 columns in table A and 100 columns in table B, it gets really hard to display that correctly from my experience.
Right, but
you could do it for sure.
Okay, cool. So let's say, can we build the same thing with a drag and drop option for web users without have the people writing on a terminal? We just drag and drop. All right, drop your SQL file here, select what you want to export the Dupify, boom, export, boom, you give them the file back.
Yes, you could do that.
Okay.
Yep. I think I'm trying to think what the best way would be. We could put a REST API in front of Deduper. I've actually just thinking about doing that anyway.
Yeah, because having the developers is a nice part of it, but having the simple people, they don't know how to code and write in the terminal. That's a different story.
Yeah, but I don't know. You know, you look at Apex controls, that HVAC client. Like, if who's the client that's less skilled than us? Like, we're the bare minimum, George, you and I, to deal with data like bases. Like anybody else, they're gonna fuck their shit up, or they don't even know how to think about schema. I think we exhaust ourselves on the developer side.
Yeah.
Sell enterprise license, like sell a license to a DBA company that has 1,000 DBAs and just be like, okay, this is just something that every developer can have on their machine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be, we'll drop the price to $50 a year, but you're going to buy 1,000 of them, something like that. Enterprise is where the money's at.
That's definitely true.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think if I'm thinking about what's novel, you know, the schema inference is kind of novel, and you know, just it's also very generic. Like you could point it at anything, and it can dedupe. It can dedupe anything, you know, that it can query.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you can embed, you know, SQL expressions in it, and you know, you could do joins, you could do transformations of the data on the way out. It's like, I think it's like, typically what interests me about software is, like, I like to write frameworks that handle large classes of problems, not one-off. Like, it doesn't interest me to solve one problem. That's why, like web scraping, that bores me, because every single time you do it, you're reinventing the wheel, because the data is going to be slightly different. But when you can write a program that solves like this could solve hundreds of problems with just different config. That's really what interests me about programming.
Well, there's a contacts app called Contacts Plus, and like, they're well-funded VC in Colorado, and like for years they've been saying, oh, let us connect to all your different contacts managers, and we'll bring them together and we'll dedupe it and make it nice. Well, they barfed and fucked up my contacts because they wrote back. Yeah, and like, I was like, dude, you can't dedupe Christima and Democris. Like, how can't you just recommend that these look close?
Right.
Like, so there's like commercial applications out today that can't do fuzzy matching or dedupe properly, and they're getting lots of VC money. So like, I think this has got a lot of utility, and the problem clearly has not been solved at scale.
Yeah. And it's the what's, you know, what else is interesting about this problem, and it's the same. It's funny. Mm-hmm. I find myself solving the same problem over and over again. The you know, that the enterprise query engine that we built, Chris. We had the same exact problem when you do distinct counts, right? What's hard about distinct counts? Well, you can't distribute them. Why can't you distribute them? Because if you count something on node A, you have no guarantee you're not counting it again on node B, right? So again, it becomes a bottleneck at the end, and there's all this crazy shuffling that has to happen when you distribute the problem. So the way we solved that was we striped the data up front in the way we knew we wanted to count it. So when we counted someone on node A, we knew we were never going to encounter them on node B. So we could go blindingly fast and then aggregate the result without having to check, have we seen this person before, right? So it's the same thing. It's a very hard problem to distribute, because you need that pristine master list to guarantee that you've deduped everything. You know what I mean? So I think deduplication of data is extremely difficult, because it's inherently a single-threaded problem. You know what I mean?
It's like best done when it's single-threaded. Like,
exactly.
So,
because, you know,
the way you built it is right. Like, it doesn't need to be a distributed process, because then it will not work. The output won't be as high confidence.
Yeah, I mean, you could do it in stages. Like, you could, I guess, dedupe in parallel, and then take that then roll that set together, and then dedupe that. You know what I mean? You could probably still find ways of parallelizing the problem, but it's you know, all of that has cost and time and RAM and CPU and memory. The other nice thing about this piece of software is it's very lightweight, as you guys can see. It runs quickly. It gets a lot of good feedback, and you know, I think I try to make it simple, where the developer or the user doesn't have to do a whole lot, and it's very understandable what's the input and the output and what's actually happening.
Yeah, it's definitely clear. the parts, the inputs, and to get going. And you built the data, the CSV and the database right in there, so people could just use it and understand it quickly. I mean, developers expect the construction of the app to be just this way. So it's like literally 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Yeah, I was actually thinking maybe embedding some scripts into the zip file would be good too. So you can like, open it up and like literally copy and paste and just, see it work right away.
Yeah, well, we'll just write some other stories in the documentation or the blog like we did with Mongo Sluice. But I don't even think that the key things that we're going to do in the next week is to play around with it, test that we know how to do all these things. And then more importantly, or as importantly, is figure out how do we sell this in a way that we don't lose, copyright or the ability to prevent copying and distributing on the dark web.
Yep. So when you guys do your testing, make sure you do JDBC and flat file. Make sure you do all of the scenarios.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I'm not sure. It's hard for me to. I'm having a difficult time guessing as to how this is most likely going to be used. Is this going to be used against flat files or databases?
Well, I don't know yet, but I'm going to go out and do some keyword research, find out what's the most spoken about thing on Stack Overflow, and figure out where the users are. It could be Postgres, it could be SQL Server. I know, and then I'll just go out to a bunch of the database companies. Like I know like 2 or 3 of them. I know senior level people, and I'll say, hey, you like to? Would this help? How would this help? How much would this help? How much would this save you?
Right.
Because if you have 1,000 DBAs, outsourced DBAs, or you're providing outsourced DBAs to 1,000 companies, that's a powerful tool.
Yeah. Oh, the other thing that's interesting is, when you set up those outputs, like you do your dedupe target or your duplicates or your hashes, those can all be different data sources, which I thought was probably obvious, but I figured I'd point it out. So in other words, you could write your dupes to a Postgres database, you could write your target to a flat file, and you could write your hash values to a SQLite database all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So you do for complexity on both sides, you could do a SQL, a statement hitting a bunch of different tables, and then you could write it out to 2 different formats, or flat, and then to a number of different databases.
Exactly. And you don't have to. The cool part is the data, the actual creation of the table is taken care of for you. So the schema is preserved because I infer the schema from the source table. So it's automatically created in with the correct values on the other side, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So when you're writing to SQL Server or Postgres, you know how to create those tables properly, and you're taking the schema from whatever your query was.
Exactly.
That's tight.
Yeah. Like I said, this is kind of just all the my bag of tricks, things that I've done over the years, and kind of just mashing them all together.
Nice. Well, 10,000 people, $99. That's a shitload of money, boys.
Yeah.
Hey, it sounds good to me.
Yeah. Well, all the stuff that we've done, this is where we're at. We kind of know how to do this. You know how to build an app that's scalable, and we know how to deploy, a website, sell and market and find people and get enterprise licenses, and not bury ourselves in like troubleshooting minutia with Mongo Sluice.
Yes. Exactly.
Still a killer problem to solve, but from a how do we make money as the goal, not solve something super interesting and hard, but do that and make money. That's the real goal.
I still want to know. I still have this occasional urge to start from scratch and have another go at that problem.
I do too. I want that big switch where you just go back tables to JSON, JSON to tables.
Yeah, man. It's just so gnarly. The JSON is just so gnarly. That's the problem.
So can we integrate like an API to generate license keys?
Yeah.
Because I see there are like some software add-ons for WooCommerce where you can connect like the API of your software and somehow it talks back and forth.
Yeah, that's what, like to write unique keys into
into the license server. So you have activated key, so you can do it monthly, yearly. You can do whatever you want after that, or lifetime.
Yeah, that's what we did with early Slam data licenses. There was some kind of server that was pushing some code into.
But Becky did it manually. She used that external license server, but we can do it right away from the WooCommerce straight to the software.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you worked on that. I forgot about that. That was such a piece of shit thing that they put together.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Okay. Well,
one other thing I wanted to show you is the logs. So as you start using this thing, there's a logs folder, and here's what the logs look like. So you see, you have the timestamp, and if we look at this guy, that's what you're actually going to have.
Mm-hmm.
This type of information. So.
Okay. So give us a quick recommendation on tools. iTerm 2, is that something that's helpful, or?
iTerm 2 is fantastic. Yeah, that's what I use.
What is iTerm 2?
It's just a nice terminal. Like the default terminal in Mac is not very good.
Okay.
And this is ZS. I just switched over to ZSH from Bash, so my shell is probably a little different than.
Mm-hmm.
I switched over. I don't know why or how or when, but.
Oh really?
I don't know even the difference. Oh, it was because last time I was trying to troubleshoot Slam Data, I couldn't get it running, and I was like, maybe it's this, because my Mac is new. Right. I don't know how I ended up there, but what's the difference between Bash and ZSH?
Oh, it's just ZSH is a little more modern, and it has some niceties that being a Bash is really old, and ZSH is more modern, has some some nice things around. You see how I can tab through things, and it'll you see how it's like choosing each thing as I tab.
Yeah.
So it's like that type of stuff.
Oh, cool.
Okay, what about that other thing? IntelliJ, is that something that we need, or is it just really terminal?
Yeah, we don't need that anymore.
Unless you guys are going to write code or do patches, I don't think that's necessary.
Yeah.
Okay.
I will say this: if you guys find bugs, let me know right away, and I'll bash them. Like just
okay.
I'll try to be real responsive and fix bugs as you guys find them.
Okay.
Because you're gonna find things because you're gonna be using it. Like this is where we're gonna find stuff that I didn't think of, and you're gonna use it the way I didn't expect, and it's just gonna happen. And I'll be real responsive on bug fixes.
Okay.
Okay. Cool. All right, so give us a couple of days. Maybe we'll be in Slack, or maybe it'll be next week. We could do a nighttime chat, tell you what we found.
Yeah.
But I think we could come up with a short-term plan for selling, and then like something more robust. Like we shouldn't spend a lot of time until we get a couple of sales.
Right.
So
that's cool. So I am going to go ahead and finish up hardening the all the things I was telling you that I'm gonna fix them up, and then I'm also going to write the module for the similar-ish statistical algorithms that I was telling you about. I think once I've got that done, I'm going to stop and just kind of like take a break.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Well, that should be plenty
basically,
of time for us.
step 1 of the installation is download the zip file and unzip it. Then open a terminal and start writing commands. Basically.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, that's all.
Doesn't get easier than that.
Okay.
Cool. All right, dudes. 12:36. That was productive. Thanks. I recorded it, so we have that. And
Yep, I also have it on my end, so I won't have to download it.
Cool. Well, what do you guys think?
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm very excited.
Very cool product. It's a very cool.
Cool.
Yeah, I see a lot of potential things to do with that.
Good show. Well, you guys let me know. I'll be on Slack. If you guys need anything, you have questions, just ping me. I'll try to be as fast. Right now, since I'm home, my Slack's up all the time. When I go back to work, it may slow down, but at this point, I have no idea when I'm going back to work. So
it works for us. So let's get on it while you're here, while we have you.
All righty.
Okay, dudes.
All right, guys.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Stay safe.
Yeah. Bye-bye.